Okay guys, we have to talk about this card. Honor demands it, or whatever you want to call it. Display of Power is a new card, and I actually think this is gonna be the best new card from the entire Lord of the Rings set. It is a red, and 1 generic, a total of 3 mana instant. Now this spell can't be copied. Copy any number of target instants and or sorcerer spells. You may choose new targets for the copies. So on this channel I often mention cards like Ad Nauseam, Dockside Extortionist, Underworld Breach and Thassa's Oracle for my various examples, and that's because these cards are so key inside this format. The format is kind of heavily built, not built around them, but they are very present inside the format, and I actually think that Display of Power will be that too. I actually think that Display of Power will be viewed a little bit similar to Mnemonic Betrayal. In the beginning people didn't really view Mnemonic Betrayal that good. They looked at it and said, yeah, it's a bit too slow maybe, but eventually over time people started to realize how they were going to execute it, and then and that's exactly how I think Display of Power will be flowing inside the cEDH community as well. I think there's gonna be people that just, yeah, it's like a fork. I mean, it literally is like an upgraded fork, but in the future people are gonna just understand that, yeah, this is definitely a powerful card. I mean, it has power in its name. So Fork and Reiterate can only target one thing, and well, if you have infinite mana and buyback, you can cast something infinitely with Reiterate. Display of Power is going to copy everything, but you can't recast it, you can't loop it infinitely. However, there are tricks. So let's say we have a Demonic Tutor on the stack, and then we have a Regrowth on the stack. This actually doesn't work, but let's just look at it for the example, because Demonic Tutor isn't actually an important card here. Let's say we have a Regrowth on the stack together with a Heretic Ritual, and then some other random thing like a Demonic Tutor or anything basically. There are other versions to Regrowth, by the way. For example, we could have a Reap on the stack that is instant speed, same thing but different. So with this, if you resolve your Display of Power, you're gonna copy all of these spells one by one. So first you're gonna generate 3 red mana, then you're gonna return a card from your graveyard back to your hand like your Display of Power, and then you're gonna resolve a copy of Demonic Tutor or whatever, like that could be a Lightning Bolt as an example. And then you're gonna recast the Display of Power with the mana you generated by the copy of Heretic Ritual. It's gonna go back to your graveyard, you're gonna regain the mana again, return it back to your hand with a copy of Reap, and with this you could infinitely cast a Demonic Tutor. Also, we could just swap out Demonic Tutor for anything, and I would like to showcase this one. Now this actually doesn't work, because Display of Power specifically reads this spell can't be copied, so don't talk about it because it won't work. I will showcase it anyway. So with Narset's Reversal you can copy any spell and send it back to your hand. Now this won't work, because Display of Power can't be copied. But otherwise you could use Reap once again and Manamorphose to gain the mana to recast things over and over. We have lots of cool tricks to actually regain a spell from a graveyard back to your hand. Noxus Revival is a little bit tricky. It would demand that you have something like a Brainstorm afterwards, but it still will do the job. Then you just need various rituals to regain the mana so you can recast Display of Power again. Manamorphose is a little bit extra interesting here, because with Manamorphose you actually draw a card as well, because you basically need 3 things. First, something that is going to return Display of Power back to your hand, then something that's gonna generate the mana so you can afford casting it again, but then you need an outlet, something you're gonna cast infinitely, something that's gonna be on the stack that you also copy infinitely. In Manamorphose's case, that is already fixing that, because that is gonna be infinite card draw. If you have a Heretic Ritual and Manamorphose and one of those return a spell from your graveyard back to your hand, you gain infinite mana and infinite card draw, and then your win could be anything. Also in this case you gain mana of any color, because that's what Manamorphose actually does. There are lots of different examples that we can showcase here, like Dramatic Reversal, Dark Ritual, etc, etc. You just need to generate 2 red mana, but that's gonna be easy. Red has a lot of rituals. But this is where the crazy part's coming. Like currently, we've viewed it like something of a 4-card combo. That's bad. Now all the cards we actually looked at are still pretty good, like rituals, returning cards from the graveyard, tutors, like everything looks great so far, so including it, even if it is a 4-card combo, isn't really a big problem. However, there is a reason I want to showcase Flash and Hulk here. You see, Flash Hulk played very strange. You often would sit with your combo in your hand, just passing the turn cycle, building value and just taking your time and looking for the perfect timing window when things looked optimal, and then go for it in instant speed. Now, display of power is an instant, obviously, it needs to be, but you can win from your opponent's cards. So if someone would cast a Pyretic Ritual from out of nowhere, you'd say, in response, I'm gonna cast a Reap, hold priority, cast Brainstorm, hold priority. Now Pyretic Ritual, Reap and Brainstorm are all on the stack, and then you cast Display of Power, and boom, you win. Because what you will do here is infinitely cast Brainstorm by generating mana to recast Display of Power and using Reap to regain Display of Power from your grave back to your hand. And the thing is that cEDH contains a lot of cards in a mirror matchup, so to say. Like, we're usually playing the same cards in every deck, more or less. This is the reason why Mnemonic Betrayal is really good, because you're going up against opponents that are going to play cards you also have inside your deck, which means that you're transforming Mnemonic Betrayal into something of a Yawgmoth's Will. It will get weaker if your opponents aren't really playing the stuff you want to have, so to say. And the same thing will be with Display of Power. If you're playing against a very Staxy oriented deck, then yeah, Display of Power isn't gonna work out because your creatures that your opponents cast isn't gonna work with this thing. But I heavily believe that Display of Power is gonna be a card that's gonna be able to snatch wins from opponents in instant speed during their turn, similar to how Flash Hulk actually operated. And I love it, because I personally really like that kind of gameplay style. It's not ultra fast, it needs a build up, it needs a few cards on the stack, and then you have it. But there's one really beautiful thing I really want to mention here, and that's silence. You see, if you actually think about some of your games, they usually contain a really big stack, and eventually someone is gonna cast a silence as an interaction to prevent someone from trying to win the game, so to say. I mean, imagine someone casting Ad Nauseam, that's very common, and then in response to that you cast Silence. That's a very common interaction versus a Ad Nauseam main phase, very good interaction too. And then you basically, no one is going to interact with the Silence because everyone wants the Silence to resolve to interact with the Ad Nauseam player. So Silence resolved, and then Ad Naus still on the stack, you cast Display of Power. That's pretty good. Now you aren't silenced. The deck that I'm envisionizing, utilizing Display of Power to a great extent, is a very instant-orientated deck, a very spell-slingy deck, a deck that is trying to be able to play the game in instant speed all of the time, and can fire off when it needs to, in instant speed, utilizing things like Silence, various rituals, various card draw effects, various spells that return various cards from the graveyard back to your hand, so you can loop Display of Power in various ways. That takes us to Necropotence. Necropotence have always had a problem, that it demands instance, because you're going to discard to hand size. You're gonna pay a lot of life, draw an enormous amount of cards, and then discard. And pass turn, usually. We usually use Final Fortune in instant speed to basically work around that, to take the turn and sculpt the perfect 7 and try to win. What we could do now is try to ritual a lot in instant speed before we discard to hand size, accumulate a lot of mana, and prefer to have a few cards on the stack, and then cast a few spells to basically build a big stack, and then cast Display of Power to create that loop. What Necropotence is doing is accumulating a lot of cards to your hand. We could of course do the same thing with Ad Nauseam. In this case, you don't need to actually move to instant speed, you can stay in sorcery speed. The difference with Necropotence is that you can play a really high CMC ratio inside the deck and still make it work. However, on the other hand, when you're playing a very instant speed orientated ritual deck, you're gonna have a really low CMC ratio anyways, so it doesn't really matter. In the end, Display of Power is a new card for the Grixis shell, but it can really operate in a really cool way and have a really interesting game plan. I think it's gonna be showcased and be used outside Grixis a lot in other various cEDH decks with other cool stormy spell slinging intents. Now I'm gonna make a prediction, and I could be wrong, but I actually think this is gonna be like a staple that's gonna show up everywhere. Once people have figured out that Display of Power is awesome, and once people figured out that I'm right, they're gonna include it like in every single deck. It's an absolutely amazing card. I really like it. It's a very strong game plan to be able to sit with an ultimate hand and pass priority, accumulate a little bit of value now and then, here and there, and then once you have the perfect timing window, go for it. Put a few cards on the stack and steal the win from your opponents. In any case guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. More card reviews are coming up, as there are a few cool cards from this cool set.